Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us this afternoon. My name's Claudia. I'm on the marketing team here at Proformex. And before we get started with the main event, I'm just here to give you a couple quick reminders. So first things first, if you have questions as we go along with today's presentation for either one of our presenters, feel free to use the chat box, the Q&A feature, any means of communication to get that question over to us. And we will either weave it into the conversation if it's a natural fit, or save it for the end when we'll have a dedicated question and answer section. Additionally, this webinar will be recorded, so if you find yourself wanting to come back and revisit something you heard or share it with some family, friends, coworkers, it'll be there for you indefinitely, so please feel free to do so. Without further ado, I will introduce today's host, who is Kelly Lytle, our VP of Customer Experience.
Yes, thank you, Claudia, and thank you to everyone for joining. I'm going to share my screen here quickly and we'll get started. Okay, well, as the title suggests, we're here to talk about making money, and more specifically, how to generate seven-figure sales with Inforce management. And we're going to share just a few simple steps to help you do so. And I'll tell you this, the opportunity to drive real revenue, real sales from your Inforce book is real, and it's significant. We know 51% of policies over their lifetime will be at risk or in need of servicing. 25% of those policies convert to new sales. And then that doesn't even take into account all of those policies that are performing well. And so what this leads to is an opportunity across your entire book for moments to upsell, to cross-sell, to simply, hopefully, have a meaningful conversation with your policy owner. And maybe from that, you'll find out of a life-changing event or something else that could lead to another new opportunity. But with that said, look, we also know all about the reasons and the challenges for why maybe you're not doing this today, or you've been hesitant to do so in the past. You're too busy. Mining the Inforce book takes too much time. It's too much effort. You're focused on net new business. Maybe you haven't talked to the particular policy owner in 5 years, 10 years, maybe longer, and you don't want to walk into that conversation. But most of all, what we hear is, I don't know where to start. And we hear that every day from prospects, from the industry, from folks talking to us. And here's the good news, though. That question, all those questions, all those obstacles, especially the notion of where do I start, that is completely normal. It's something we hear, it's something we see every single day. Now, the better news, though, is that what we're talking about today, these 4 simple steps, are going to help you overcome those obstacles and help you capitalize on the opportunities that exist inside your book of business today. But the best news is that with us today, we have an expert, we have an industry veteran, somebody who has walked the walk, and somebody who has built his business and achieved exactly what this title says, 7-figure sales with Inforce management. And he's here to break it all down for us today. So I'm excited, incredibly excited to have and to be talking to Mike Pepe. Mike is the founder of Proformex. He is our chief strategy officer, and he has lived everything he is about to take us through. Mike, welcome. Excited to have you here.
Kelly, thanks for having me. Excited to be here, and thanks for everyone attending the webinar today. So,
all right, Mike, you ready to get started?
Let's do this.
All right, let's rock and roll. Okay, you cannot monetize your book of business, and you cannot generate new sales consistently without first knowing what you've sold. So step one is to create visibility inside your book of business. So Mike, without, well, we're going to talk about why the simple act of creating visibility is transformative to your business in a second. But before we do so, can you talk about why visibility is necessary to just get started?
Yeah, it goes back to, think about, for all the producers on the phone, when you first started out, you sold your first policy, that's great. I remember, back in my Mass Mutual days, selling one policy, two policies, three policies. Very excited, very happy for my clients. Very easy to have the visibility because it's one carrier and one product. But, fast forward for myself 2, 3, 4 years in the future, while I have, 30, 40, 50 clients at that time, I'm starting to work with carriers, not just one, but multiple products. And it gets harder and harder to have that visibility and stay on top of things. So if you lose that visibility, it's hard to really know what's coming up or even remember what you sold when you first did it. So visibility is the key to the whole thing. And unfortunately, in our industry, you would think it'd be easy, but it's not. I mean, to do this, when I was doing this, when I first started, it was an Excel on steroids. I took every carrier, I took every client, every policy number, I put it in a list, and I wrote down, okay, when's the anniversary? Then I grouped the anniversaries individually, and it was manual, but it was necessary for me to get that visibility on it because I didn't want anything to drop through the cracks. So step one for everyone, I don't care if you do it manually, if you have a technology you work with, you need to know what you know. So that is the key critical part for yourself and for your clients.
Yeah, absolutely. And can you walk us through a little bit more? Again, whether it's manual, whether it's leveraging certain technologies, can you walk us through a little bit just on how visibility started to transform your business, your day-to-day, but don't spoil where we want to go with the rest of the discussion. So take us through that a little bit.
So for me, the visibility was keeping everything in one place and knowing what to work on each week, each month, each quarter. So for me, first of all, I want to group my clients' policies together in one spot because most of my clients had multiple policies and they were for multiple carriers. So I wanted to make sure I had visibility and line of sight on their total death benefit. And then I wanted to really track the anniversaries of these policies because, we were committed at the time to monitoring these policies, staying top on them, and educating our clients on if and when there was issues with them. So for me, it was anniversaries. Give me each anniversary by month and how is our game plan going to be to work through those policies. So that was the key thing. Other key things, on the term side, if we knew that we sold a term policy for a specific purpose, we wanted to know that purpose and we wanted to track that. We wanted the conversion dates so they didn't fall through the cracks as well. So, starting with the visibility, giving yourself a game plan and an action plan on what you're going to do each week, each month, that's step one. Getting that visibility is great, but how do you organize it and how do you put it in a way that's manageable and productive for you and your team?
Yeah. And that, Mike, that's the perfect segue into step two, because you're describing exactly what needs to happen next. So you create visibility, you have insights into your book of business, what you've sold. The next step needs to be, how is that book of business performing? And from my lens and talking to our customers all the time, talking with prospects all the time, what I hear is everybody will say there just aren't enough hours in the day, right? And what that means to me is that there needs to be focused attention on specific policies where you can take targeted specific actions, and all of that leads to exactly what you were just saying, which is prioritizing policies and creating a plan of attack. And so I'd love for you to kind of expand upon what you were talking about a little bit just a second ago, and just take us through some examples of how you went in, you saw your book of business, and how you started to prioritize and create a plan that would ultimately become very successful for you.
Yeah, for me, like most advisors, it started with, smaller policies, term policies, then some permanent. As my practice evolved, I started to work with higher net worth individuals and a lot of trust-owned life insurance. So for me, I prioritized the trust-owned life insurance policies because I was working with fiduciaries. So they had a duty to manage these at the level that, I believed was the best thing for the client. So it was a perfect fit. So for us, it started with, premium gifts. When do the premium gifts need to go out to the grantors? Once those gifts go out, can I support and alert the trustee about the crummy letters going out? And then from there, it says, okay, now that we know that the premium was paid, let's really dig in this policy and let's prioritize the ones that may be a little older. Let's take a look at those and make sure they're still on track. The newer ones, we knew we had time to do some simple monitoring, making sure premiums are paid. But once the policy started getting older, it went in a different cadence. If it was older than 7 years, in my case, every year we were doing an annual review, ordering statements and illustrations. So we had different policies and different cues based on how old they were. And our system helped us keep track of which ones we were going to work on and what level and what priority we're giving each policy.
Exactly. So you're segmenting your book of business, identifying different and strategic approaches to those groupings of policies, all built upon the visibility that you had into the book to let you take specific actions around them. Talk to me a little bit about what about some of the, kind of maybe more urgent, some of the more urgent policy actions that you might have to take, lapse pending, that sort of.
Yeah. So obviously lapse pending was huge for us because, things fall through the cracks, clients, forget to pay premiums once in a while, or they get misplaced or they don't get the notice, so anytime we saw a policy in lapse pending, we took it upon ourselves to identify that policy, gather the information and get it out to the client so they could correct that and hopefully get it back on track. Term periods ending, term conversions coming up. We wanted to get ahead of those. So not only did we know they were coming up, but our clients knew they were coming up as well. And they knew their options sooner than later so that they could take action. And the last part that we prioritized was, policies that are off track. We knew what our clients' guidelines were for how much of coverage they needed, how much premium they were willing to pay, how long they needed that policy to stay in force. So we monitored that. And if anything was off track, that was another red flag for us. And that policy got prioritized to really do a full-blown review of how the policy is performing, what we can do to get it back on track, what other products are out there that may make more sense. And then lastly, for our clients that no longer needed the coverage or couldn't afford it, is there a better solution than just surrendering the policy? So again, we started looking at life settlements as well as a priority for them as well.
Absolutely. And I think it's also interesting too. So all of these creates these very strategic segments for across your book. What about policies that were performing well and maybe they didn't have an event coming up? I would think maybe this is the wrong assumption, but I would think that also creates an opportunity for a nice client engagement point.
It did, and for us, it created a lot of referrals because our clients knew that every 3 years, regardless of how the policies were performing, we were going to do a review for them and confirm their guidelines, make sure that it's still in line with what they're looking for. And I'd love to deliver good news. I mean, that was the best part. Hey, we're still on track. Your goals are in line with your policy. We'll continue monitoring this for us. I can't tell you how many times Mike, they reached out, Mike, this was very useful. Thank you. By the way, we got this policy, or can you take a look at my brother's policy, or we got another trust over here. So it always good news led into new opportunities for us. So, those became a key to our practice because it's hard to deliver bad news once in a while, but you need to do it, especially if you wrote the policy. But delivering good news and knowing that your clients can trust you, that you're monitoring, that's huge. It builds that trust between you and your client, and it really puts you in front of their mind when they need other things.
Yeah. And I think what's really meaningful too about what you said and about your approach is that you're talking about covering up what I would assume is about 100% of your book. And so maybe not every policy had an urgent action, but you were able, by having the visibility into it and then understanding how that book was performing, to essentially have a game plan around 100% of your policies. And that seems to be a really unique, very beneficial opportunity.
Yeah, and again, it was peace of mind for me too, because I knew nothing would fall through the crack if I followed the process and the way we prioritize things. I knew that, you know, we were doing the right thing for our policyholders and our clients, and they were protected. So that was the key to, you know, why Proformex is even around right now. It's all about, you know, protecting the policyholders, doing the right thing, and if you do that, good things happen. And you know, I was the poster board for that. So.
Yep. And save some of those thoughts, because we're definitely going to get there in a few questions here. So I think this is a perfect segue into step 3, because once you know what you have and you have visibility into your book, and then you're able to be informed on how that book is performing, that information then lets you create a prioritized and strategic plan, as you just heard from Mike, around 100% of your book of business, which means more coverage, more opportunities to have those engagements and sales opportunities. But as we all know, a plan is often just words on paper, or a plan is really just words on paper until you take action and put action behind it. So step 3, and this is so critical, is to take action. And you know, Mike, your business thrived around Inforce management. And I think for everyone here, can you give us some specific examples around the types of actions you took once you prioritized, once you had segmented your book?
Yeah, so you know, for our action step, you know, we set it up. Any policy that we're going to do a review on, that we determined that, you know, it was time to do a full-blown review. You know, before we had the process, it was all manual. You know, so the first thing we did is we went into our filing cabinets and we dug out the file, and some files were 5 to 10 pounds. You know, but we dug through. We found that what we originally sold, we always tied back to that. You know, we looked at all the reviews that we've done in the past. What happened in each review? What was the outcome? We requested statements in a current Inforce and also an alternate illustration if we knew the policy was off track. Then we looked at the guidelines that we had tracking the policy, and we reached out prior to the review with the client to confirm that the guidelines were still the guidelines for the client, or if we needed to adjust any of those prior to sitting down with them. And that really gave us a chance to say, okay, you know, we're doing your review again this year. It's coming up. We'll probably be ready in about 2 weeks. You know, as getting ready for this, you know, let's just review quickly your guidelines. Here's what we have for your policy. Are those still in line? Great. If not, you know, tell me what's changed and, you know, what's your new guidelines. So that was always a key to what we did. Then once we got those statements and illustrations back, we probably reordered them 2 or 3 times to make sure they're done right. But then we reviewed all that. And for us, that took a lot of time. And then we had to put it in some type of deliverable to the client, you know. So in the early days, it was an Excel, you know, and we were trying to be consistent, so the client knew what they're going to get each and every year, and it was consistent no matter what carrier or what product, because you know, we wanted to make sure that it was simple for them to understand. And then we set up that meeting and we reviewed the policies based on their needs. And for us, you know, we always showed them, here's what you need to do to get it back on track if it's off track. Here are product alternatives that you may want to consider, you know, based on your guidelines. And then again, if it was an older client, you know, if you no longer can afford it or no longer need it, you know, there's a potential life settlement. Here's what the potential could be. And then each and every year we documented the outcome, and it could be maintain that policy. We're all good. Great. You know, or let's modify the current coverage, or let's replace it, sell it, but everything got documented and in there. So then the next review, we knew what happened and everything tied back to the guidelines and what was originally sold. So we documented every step of the process. And for our clients, if they needed something that we did 3 years ago, it's all in the system and it was ready for them. So.
Absolutely. And I'd love, you know, obviously this was one of the core principles of how you built your business and grew your business. Can you give us some highlights of, obviously don't, without sharing any names, but some highlights of maybe some of the outcomes that came from you taking action and delivering all the steps that you had? Would love to hear if there's a few kind of specific outcomes for folks to hear.
Yeah, I mean, there's been so many. You know, the biggest thing that I uncovered by doing this is I got to bigger opportunities quicker and I was differentiated. My competitors were selling products. I was selling a service and a process for my clients. So, early on in my career, I was fortunate enough to compete against, seasoned professionals in the industry. And, I won a lot of cases based on my commitment to the service. And some large cases that, are out there. And what happened was, being introduced from these reviews, introduced to someone's attorney or CPA, started working with that CPA or attorney, but then working with the entire firm, reviewing their policies. So my biggest takeaway, and surprises was, you could really speed up your practice, by doing the right thing. And again, word of mouth gets out there. And, once they see the process and what's delivered, they want it for all their clients. And even policyholders wanted it because this is great. I want it for everything. I was pleasantly surprised to find policies that my clients had that I didn't know they had, and they brought to me, oh, I have this one and this one. Please take a look at these as well. So again, pretty powerful there. Probably my largest case, that I did because of the review process. It was a referral in from an attorney that just brought on a new client and wanted me to review the policies. And I was sitting there with the current advisor across the table, and I was, presented on what we had. And I honestly thought the attorney was going to go with the old advisor, which, that happens. That's great. But the policyholder, the grantor said, nope, we're going with you. This is the process that we're looking for. We're needed. And, that surprised me. It surprised the other advisor, and it was close to a $400,000 case. So, that really set the stage for me early on that, this is powerful. This changes people's attitudes on, what insurance advisors should be doing.
Yeah. That's, and I love what you said too about, sort of about operating through the lens of the policy owner and the beneficiaries and doing the right thing from a service perspective, leading to and expanding all these opportunities.
Yeah.
And thinking about expanding opportunities, one item, you touched on it a little bit there, but in something we've talked about this too. I know the action steps that you took led to a lot of other prospecting opportunities as well. And so can you kind of bring that together a little bit more for us to give us some insights into that?
Yeah, again, it's all about, the perception. So for me, working with, trust-owned life insurance, working with individual trustees that are typically part of a professional firm, they see what I'm doing for that particular client. So I was brought in at the client level, met with the trustee that they had, did the analysis, the review, and got them in the regular cycle of the Inforce service that we were doing. And that led into, okay, I have, I'm the trustee on 12 other ILETs. I need you to look at that. I got this corporation I do work with. Please look at the corporate policies as well. So, that taking action leads into a differentiator. And again, it opens a door for additional referrals because again, they want that same type of service for the other policies they have and they're managing as well.
Right. Absolutely. So let's jump to step 4. And Mike, I'm going to need you to elaborate a little bit more on this one, but ultimately step 4, train to get results. And if you talk to Mike and you're hearing from Mike today, anyone who implements steps 1 through 3 is creating a differentiator inside their business. And what's also interesting is that you're training your clients and your policy owners to expect these types of outcomes, which I think is a subtle but very important mindset shift. And Mike, something that you've shared, that mindset shift created a transformational impact on your business. So can you elaborate a little bit more for us about how you were training your policy owners, your clients, in order to get the results that you wanted?
Yeah, early on in my career, when I sold a product, I said, "This is great. We're going to implement this and put this in place for you." But again, it's a means to an end for you. You're utilizing this life insurance for a specific purpose. We need to make sure this policy is going to perform the way it's hypothetically, shown to you today. If not, we're going to stay on top of it and hopefully we could fix what you have. But if not, don't be surprised if, what you own today is going to be different 5 or 10 years in the future. The goal of what we're doing here is to make sure it does what it's intended to, whether it's, with the current carrier or it's in a different carrier down the road. So trained them early on at time of sale. And then when we did our reviews, it's not one time and they never saw us again. They knew that at least every 3 years, they were going to get the same type of analysis. So my clients were trained to know that a review was coming up, that we're going to review their current guidelines, and then we're going to deliver the same report to them each and every time. And we wanted to document their outcome. So for me, that training transformed my whole practice. I was no longer selling. I stopped selling, probably, 10 years into my career, I stopped selling. It was all about the data and their needs. And here it is. Here's how your policy is performing based on your guidelines. Here's what we could do to fix it. You may or may not like that. Here are other products we can do. It's going to require some underwriting. You may or may not like that. And again, if you no longer need it or can't afford it, here's what we could do with it. And all I needed to know from them is you tell me what we're going to do and we're going to document for it. And again, maintaining it is a good thing. That's great. That means it's working. If we need to modify it, we'll get to work on that. If we need to replace it, if we need to sell it. So that whole process transformed my whole practice. And I wasn't seeing like a pushy, sales agent trying to make the next sale, so that opened up a lot of referrals to me. And, that was powerful. That was powerful for us.
Yeah, you became a trusted advisor, and they were, from what you're saying, they're proactively reaching out to you in order to whatever enhancement or anything else they may need.
Yeah, and with our process too, a lot of things from the carrier level, we would notify our clients premiums coming up, and working with a foundation one time, we notified them a pretty large premium payment. And they got to us and they're like, we never got the premium notice from the carrier. We think you're wrong. We're not going to pay it. We got on the phone with them and that carrier said, not only didn't we send you the premium payment, but we're not going to send it to you. It's based on your contract. You should be paying it. So we were able to help them there. We had another client that, it was a trust account. It was a large policy. The trustee didn't gather the premium gift in time. So they changed it from annually payment to quarterly payment. Our system identified that and uncovered they lost 20 years of guarantees. We were able to alert them based on our process, get the money up there and reset those guidelines and those guarantees for them. So, the whole process, the alerting, that's valuable too, because those things, no one's going to know if you don't review it. You only find out when it's too late at that time. So,
yep. And I see some questions coming in. So before we get to the Q&A, I kind of want to bring it all together here and talk through these 4 steps, but even more important. So Mike, obviously you implemented all of these steps in your practice and generated over time 7 figures of sales from your Inforce book. But you didn't, what I think is really compelling is you didn't stop there. You thought about, how does this change an industry? How does this operate at scale? So as we look at these 4 steps here all together, talk us through your perspective in creating Proformex and what you're, we're working to achieve at scale, so that whether your book is 50 policies, 500 policies, 25,000 policies, right, or more, that you're able to implement these steps and drive the type of results that you're looking for.
Yeah. Think about step 1, even if you don't have a platform right now, you do have the ability to gather all your data. It's going to take you a lot of time and it's going to take you a lot of effort, but you could go to each individual carrier website, you could pull down that information, but you need the visibility. So step 1 for me was, how do I automate most of that and make it a lot easier to get line of sight sooner? So, with Proformex, we've been working hard on the data side. Kelly, you've been doing a lot of this. We're building relationships carriers. We're over 1 million policies now that we have line of sight with carrier feeds, but it doesn't stop there, because not all carriers can integrate. So with our platform, you could add additional policies from as sold data, from statements and illustrations. Again, you need to have that complete visibility to really do the right thing for your clients. So step 1, that's what Proformex is built around. Let's get the line of sight. Let's give you a consolidated view. Let's make this easy to see your entire book. Even for me, I didn't know how many policies I exactly had, how much death benefit, how much premium, cash value, surrender value. With Proformex, that, and it's easily seen, and you could filter that data any way you want. From there, then prioritize your policies. with our tracking system and monitoring based on the guidelines, if you want to see all your policies that are off track as it relates to the lapse age, it's a click of a button and everyone pops up. Same thing with premium, with death benefit, with credit rate, with Comdex. Very easy to do that. If you want to look at your anniversaries by month, coming up for this month, they're all right there for you. Term conversions, term periods ending, anything that, can benefit you and your clients. It starts with the visibility and the data and breaking it up. And, our team at Proformex has done a great job with giving you the visualization tools that get you ahead of that so you could be proactive, not reactive. And then I take action, that means a lot of different things for different people. It might just mean a phone call, reaching out to the policyholder or the agent. That's great, taking action. It could be that plus delivering a policy snapshot. Here's the data we got in our system, or it could be a full-blown report, that ties in how the policy is performing and what product alternatives and your recommendations. With our platform, you could customize that take action part and build your reports the way you want, but it's scalable and it's consistent across all of them. So it doesn't matter what carrier or what product, when the policyholder is looking at it, they know what they're looking at it. It's simple to understand, and they could take action on it. And the last thing, by doing step 1, 2, and 3 and getting your clients involved, or if you're working with agents, you're training them to get the results. They know what's coming up next and they start looking forward to it, and they know, okay, good, we're still on track, or I know it's coming, we're going to take care of that. So everything that you do in step 1, 2, and 3 leads to number 4. And that's where the relationship comes in, with, for myself, it was myself and my clients, that's technology is never going to take that away. At the end of the day, people buy from people they trust. And, this whole process and Proformex helps you strengthen those relationships and differentiate yourself.
Yeah, I think that's perfectly said, Mike. And it's kind of the culmination of everything that you did, all these steps that you took to generate real sales, significant sales from your book. And, I'll save kind of parting thoughts for a moment. I know we have a few questions, so I'll stop sharing my screen here, and why don't I open up to a few questions. So. Okay. Mike, I will read this one and then we'll see who should answer. As you conduct your review, you will surely identify contracts that are underperforming or inappropriate to current conditions and planning circumstances. By engaging the owner, as you're suggesting, you're taking the first step to establishing an advisory and monitoring obligation, which has important future practice management and liability implications. If you review current regulatory and legal standards, you'll recognize that the due diligence standards initially exist at the point of sale. So if you want to talk to that at all, Mike.
Yeah, for me, it comes down to what's the right thing for the client. Are you selling a product and never talking to them again? For me, it was about the right thing, the best interest of my client, whether there's a regulation or not. I want to tie back to the client's needs each and every year, and I want to document the outcome. So, in Proformex, all the reviews get documented in there, all the notes are in there, because I don't want anything to fall through the crack. And if there's an issue in the future, with regulations coming, someone can open up Proformex and say, here's what I did 5 years ago. Here's the review. Here's what the outcome was, so I'm protected, the policyholder is protected. But at the end of the day, if you do the right thing, and if we make these policies perform the way they're intended, and if they're not, and if we know that sooner than later, we need to protect these beneficiaries. And, that's what I'm proud about with the platform.
Yep. And another question that came through, and actually one I had on my list, but we didn't quite get to, but it is something we hear a lot. Mike, for those policy owners who you maybe haven't talked to in a few years, or whose policy isn't quite performing as hoped or as intended, how did you approach those conversations?
Yeah, for my personal clients, it was tough. A lot of clients, I admit it, fell through the cracks. From my early clients to where I was in my mid-career, I reached back out to them and said, hey guys, sorry, we haven't been around. Your policy's still with us. We have a new process in place, that really is gonna stay on top of these, because I don't want this to happen again. So I made a lot of phone calls early on, but I educated clients, why they should continue to work with me and what we're going to do with this platform moving forward. And I thought it would be harder, but a lot of clients, were happy about that. Say, hey, it's no big deal. It's life insurance. Well, I'm like, no, it's not just life insurance. Things can get off track here, and I don't want that to happen to you. So they were happy to re-engage. I lost some clients too. Some of those clients said thanks, but no thanks. But once I had those conversations and once I got them in the system, it was a whole different view. So it's hard to have those conversations, but you need to. If not, what's going to happen to that policyholder? So.
Yep. So another question here, what is your experience in terms of getting the required source data from the policy admin systems from the carrier servicing these policies into Proformex for the required visibility and analytics? Thinking about complex carrier ecosystem here, that is an understatement. How did you surpass this challenge in the Proformex platform?
Yeah. So I don't know, Kelly, you want to start and I could chime in. I mean, originally we had no data inputs. It was all done with statements and illustrations. So our system can help alleviate the requesting for statements and illustrations. You could customize your request. And when those documents come back in, you can manually input that data right into our platform, or we have a service option where you could upload those statements and we could transpose that for you. So when we first started this, there was no carrier feeds at all. Kelly, I'll let you talk about the carrier fees, where we were and where we're currently and where we're going here with them. So.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I think a couple of things. One, to say, I would never say we've surpassed or solved this challenge, because it is a constant, daily, hourly, often work in progress. And it's work that we have addressed and attacked, and I think done a remarkable job in terms of growing and scaling the platform across all aspects of Proformex. So from our team, who is the front lines acquiring data and working closely with carriers to establish those relationships, build those relationships out, and cultivate the trust that is necessary from data security, vendor governance, all of those perspectives, all the way through our data team, our development team, and everybody who is essentially has built the system for us to manage and navigate not just a complex carrier ecosystem in terms of authorizations, but also a complex carrier ecosystem in terms of how data is delivered, the formats that data is delivered in, the multitudes of formats that Proformex receives the data in. And because of the strength of our team across Proformex, I think we've been able to build a really strong infrastructure that lets us, it essentially puts us in the best position possible when those surprises occur, because as anyone who has worked on acquiring data from carriers knows, you're going to be surprised quite often. The other thing I'll say too is the way we think about data, right? Our goal is to create the most holistic picture possible for that policy, for that policy owner. And so we're bringing in data from multiple sources. And so each one, hopefully, is additive to the other. And so Mike talked about earlier, we'll oftentimes capture point of sale information that is uploaded and added to the Proformex system, which is usually a more static representation of information captured when the policy was sold, or maybe it has been updated a few times over its lifetime. We also work closely with roughly 30 carrier partners today, where we're receiving data feeds from them, and that list is continuing to grow and accelerate. And so the benefit of those carrier data feeds is that information is refreshing on a regular and consistent basis. And then, as Mike also mentioned, we also do, depending on the policy, depending on the relationship, depending on the need, we'll order statements and illustrations from carriers to further enrich that data. And so I think the way we think about information, the way we think about policy data at Proformex is really unique, because all of those different building blocks play a role in creating that holistic picture. The other piece specifically to the carrier ecosystem, especially around data feeds, is that the list of exceptions, the list of strange rules, the sort of convoluted maze that we get into around who can authorize what data it's really complex. And we have teams dedicated to navigating those questions and those considerations. And we've built really robust processes around how we're authorizing data, because at the heart of it all, we have to ensure data protection, data security, and make sure that that is job number one. And then we're working closely with the carriers, because if something is amiss, we're having conversations with them and we're working to solve that problem at a root level. And so we've worked very closely with carriers on acquiring additional data points, on smoother delivery mechanisms, on more protected cadence around authorizations. And so all of these things play a role. So there isn't any one solution we've put in place. It's a consistent work in progress that spans really our whole company, because data is at the heart of everything we do.
Yep.
And I think there's one. Oh, okay. So, okay. Can the Inforce illustration be compared to new alternative illustrations?
Yes. So obviously you could get the current Inforce, you could plug it in our platform, it could show how it's performing based on the guidelines. Then you have the ability to drop in product alternatives if you choose to showcase them right into the second page of the report. And you could drop in your comments and your recommendations via text as well. So when I did it, that's what I did. Here are the top 3 product alternatives that may make sense, so they could visually see it based on what they had. Then I had the illustrations as backup to give them as well. But visually, that was a good starting point for us. Here's what you have. These are 3 that you may want to consider. Here are the pros and cons of each one of those. And again, I was able to lay it all in the platform and store all the documents and embed those alternatives right into the report.
Yep, absolutely. Okay. So I think there's one more question, and Mike, I'll let you kind of speak to it. Kind of relates back to the first question we raised around or talked through around some of the regulatory and legal considerations. But also, I think I want to kind of say before we get into it, right, there's only so far we can take the answer to this question. And obviously, we're happy to talk offline with anyone who wants to go further into detail on any of these, just to be mindful of time, and as well as the kind of particularities of some of the questions or the question. So going back to question 1, Mike, some agents still function in a way they are permitted to under existing regulatory requirements. And I think if I'm summarizing correctly, anything additional to add around, the potential for, I guess, liability risk or practice implications to your practice around that.
All I could say to that is, for me, making a recommendation, doing nothing is a recommendation, so, when I didn't review these policies, my clients consider these policies were still on track, because that was my job to keep them on. So, a recommendation to do nothing is still a recommendation. So for me, I wanted to protect against that, and I want to document it and get them to tie back to us. I will tell you, just today I'm playing in a member guest, and this morning I was paired up with another member, and his guest was a former client of mine. And it was so nice to him walk over and say, he asked me how Proformex was doing. I asked him, how's he doing with his policies? He said, everything's working great. The guy that took over my practice is working with him. He said, everything's so smooth. We didn't have to worry about anything. He wished us the best with the technology, and he glad it was Inforce. So, that was nice. So, think about, your clients, think about long-term when you're no longer in the business as well. With a platform like Proformex, I did it. I brought in another advisor, introduced him to my clients. He took over my practice with the use of the platform, and he's thriving today as well. But more importantly, my clients are protected. And it was nice to get verification of that today. So.
Yeah. I think that's a great way. I think we're out of questions. And so I think that's a great, and we're right at time. So I think that's a great way to kind of end. Mike, any parting thoughts from your side, just for the audience to think about, again?
Yeah.
Generating sales, right, from the Inforce book.
Yeah, all I can say is, it could be overwhelming depending on how big your book is, but you got to start somewhere. Whether it's your own Excel that you're going to put together so you could proactively manage a handful of policies. I believe in Proformex, the process, the procedures we have. You don't know until you start it. Start small. Maybe you put 10% of your policies in there. Work up to 20, but being proactive is a lot better than being reactive. I don't want, I never wanted to get those calls that, premiums going up 300% or your policy's lapsing, or, you got, it just wasn't fun to get those. And, the industry is reactive because that's how it was set up. But being proactive, doing the right thing, protecting your client is going to lead to, great opportunities to drive revenue.
Yeah, well said. And so just to wrap everything, if you are, whether you're a current customer, whether you're a prospect, just so you know, this is is recorded and you'll be able to access it. So feel free to reach out to any of us, Mike, myself, team, and we'll make sure to get it for you. And then of course, also, if you are interested in learning more, you want a demo, you want to chat with Mike, maybe he'll invite you to his member guest next year, and or whatever the case may be, visit us, reach out to us. We always love to talk at www.proformex.com. And again, thank you all for joining, and have a great rest of the week and weekend. Thanks.
Thanks, everyone.